National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in Bangalore. This is my 30th. 30 years ago, I visited Varanasi with my two daughters. So this is my 30th anniversary returning. And we came in June, and we realized that there's three kinds of weather in India. Garam, Bahut Garam, and Bahut Bahut Garam. I want you to be curious as you sit there. I've been teaching, as I said. I'm now a guest professor at IIT, but I regularly teach at University of Colorado. I want you to be curious, and I want you to ask questions. And I realize, students, you up there, students, hello? Hello? Students? I want you to be curious and ask a question. Think about a question. And I know that I need to reward you. So the first student who asks a question when I'm finished, I will give 2 rupees. I have been searching. Too loud, too close? Right. I've been searching, talk about the relevance of Buddhism to life. I've been searching for some sort of underlying theory that covers everything. Now, back in the 1960s, they came up with string theory in physics, and they decided, that strings were the smallest thing possible, and they called it the theory of everything. So I'm going to call mine the theory that underlies everything. I think it underlies even string theory. And so I've been searching through that, and as I was reading, there's over 50,000 texts of Buddhism. So it's kind of tough to disagree with people when they say, oh, Buddha said this. But one of them is the concept of sukha and dukkha. Oh, wait, one back slide. That's the view from my window at the University of Colorado. We're at about 2,000 meters, and Pikes Peak goes up about 14,000 feet. That's where I'm regularly at the University of Colorado. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. So, here it begins. We are biological organisms, and as I asked my esteemed friend there earlier, oh, he left. Some kind of friend. What percentage are we water? And he said, well, when I was in high school, we would learn 70%. And that's what I learned, 70%. So we're H2O. So this concept of sukha is like a pleasurable state, a steady state. Dukkha, or sukh, dukkha is unsteady state or unpleasurable state. So I'm starting to think that maybe that sukha and dukkha may be related to affinities and disaffinities. And if there's a thesis statement for what I'm talking about, that is affinity and disaffinity, I think underlies everything. And I can trace it to the concept affinity, sukha, or sukh, and disaffinity, dukkha. And I think that underlies even string theory. Can I explain gravity? That's what string theory was really popular because it replaced quantum physics. They couldn't explain in quantum theory gravity, and string theory could, or at least they said they could. I think I can do that too, as you'll see. So, we're all biological organisms. We're largely, though, let's try the next slide. We operate on the principles of chemistry, because we are H2O. And here we start with, like the sodium-potassium pump, the concentrations of sodium potassium across ions, across plasma membranes, essential for all physiological processes, and besides water. But what we have here too is 2 molecules of hydrogen with 1 molecule of oxygen. That's what we're told, right? An affinity for 2 molecules of hydrogen for an affinity of only 1 molecule of oxygen. Not 2, it's a disaffinity for that. And not 3 molecules of hydrogen. It's a disaffinity for that. So even H2O ruled that this is chemistry, and it rules all biology. Okay, next slide. So, 2 molecules of hydrogen have an affinity, a sukha or a sukh, for only one molecule of oxygen and a natural disaffinity for O2. Now, O2 is an affinity, but then it's the oxygen we breathe. So H2O2 is possible, but it takes external manipulation and all kinds of energy. So the natural affinity or disaffinity, I relate to sukha and dukkha. Next slide, please. But chemistry is ruled by physics. And how's that work? Well, it's ratios, stable ratios of protons to electrons, and a minimization of free energy. So the ratios of protons to electrons are affinities and disaffinities for other ratios because it makes unstable elements. But what is physics ruled by? Next slide. Affinity for certain atomic states, a disaffinity for other atomic states. Next slide, please. So, here's that translation of sukha as happiness, ease, pleasure, and not preya, a transient pleasure, something that's long-lasting. And it is a major motivating life principle in Vedic literature. And I say that sukha can also mean an affinity. Next slide, please. And dukkha, or duk, translates as suffering, pain, unease, unsatisfied state of being. So I propose that dukkha could also mean a disaffinity. Next slide, please. So biology is based on chemistry. Chemistry is informed by physics. Physics' main underlying principle is an affinity and disaffinity particular states of existence. And this is my whole thesis statement. I think the concepts of sukha and dukkha, or sukh and dukh, parallel and may even herald the two principles of physics. So Buddha came up with this idea probably 500 BC. Did he know about physics? Was he in contact with some kind of rule in the universe that we didn't know about? Is it a mere coincidence? If you talk about a coincidence as I'm talking and then we hear a noise, that's a coincidence, but it's not very meaningful. But Carl Jung, a psychologist, came up with a concept of synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence. And I think this is a meaningful coincidence, an example of Carl Jung's synchronicity. So life and existence can be thought of as an affinity or a sukha, and death and non-existence as a disaffinity or dukkha. And I also think that this single principle, affinities and disaffinities, the single principle behind physics, that's behind chemistry, that's behind our biology, that this is the single principle that underlies all of existence. Next slide, please. I ask my students, what would we be without memories? And they often say, well, we'd be demented. You wouldn't take another breath if you didn't have genetic memory for breathing, for respiration, for metabolism. So memory is essential. And memories are genetic memories. And these life processes are coded in our DNA, and they had to be originally learned. So any of these reflexes, they had to have been originally learned. We just didn't inherit them completely in toto. Next slide. Memory it always entails learning. Next slide. Well, this is an easy one. How old is the Earth? 4.567 billion years old. These two kinds of learning, non-associative and associative, we get this non-associative learning that is a relationship between a stimulus and a response. We get it as early as 4 billion years.